thought I'd ask David, David, do you want to just talk about yourself and how you became involved with the DataWise project and its work through Harvard?
Okay, so I guess I'll start by saying I've been in the field of education for about 11 years. I was a high school teacher in North Carolina, back in the States. I taught at a large comprehensive high school that had about 2,000 students in it for 5 years, and then I spent 2 years at an early college high school in North Carolina that had about 400 students. So I had a very large school experience and then a very small school experience. Shortly after that, I became a consultant working for a company based in Denver that helped schools implement research-based practices, and we did a lot of focus on data work. So I had about a 2.5-year experience helping schools and districts and state departments to really begin to learn how to look at data and how to use it to improve instruction before I came to Harvard, where I learned about the DataWise process, met Kathy Bodette, Liz City, and was eager to kind of see what their process was all about, because it was an inquiry process similar to one that I had worked with before, but it definitely had some differences. And as I began to read more about the process, I learned that DataWise had a few things about it that made it really unique that I wanted to learn more about, so I began working with them.
Well, just follow up on that point, David. What would be one thing that the uniqueness about the process that struck you?
The biggest thing that really struck me was, the process has 8 steps to it, and step 4 is really about digging into student data, where you have to come up with something called a learner-centered problem, where after looking at multiple sources of data that could involve test scores and student work, teachers and principals have to figure out what students are struggling with, and then step 5, and we call that thing that they're struggling with a learner-centered problem that stems from the student work. And then we move into step 5, which is examine instruction. And when you examine instruction, you look specifically at the instruction that's connected to the learner-centered problem that you developed. And that, to me, was where the rubber met the road, and that's kind of what distinguished the DataWise process from other inquiry processes that really try to use data to drive instruction. Because there's the data there that you look at, and it actually connects to what the students are doing and what the teachers are doing to produce student work.
It's amazing because, so David, you've been out here, short visit, but you've been out here and you've looked at the way we're trying to implement that process, and I know several things have struck you.
Absolutely.
Would you like to talk about 1 or 2 of those things that really struck you from our context about how we're going about that?
There are a few things that struck me. The first thing that I want to point to is the faculty meeting, the staff meeting that I was able to attend yesterday, and I noticed that you all use the stoplight protocol to have your staff of teachers, there's a range of teachers with a range of experience here from prep, that's what we call them here in Victoria, through the 6th grade. And it was really nice to see the diversity of teachers in the room at the end of the day after I had walked through the school and met many of them and saw them teaching their students. And you use the stoplight protocol to have them map out where they thought they were with regards to the 8 steps of the DataWise process. And as I reflected on the stoplight protocol, I noticed that 100% of teachers rated you all at green for the first step, which was organizing for collaborative work. And about 85 to 90% rated you all as green for the second step, building assessment literacy, with 10 to 15% of the teachers who stated that you all were in the yellow phase. As you move through the process, though, we saw a lot more yellow and red, and then I learned that you all had really emphasized the prepare phase of the DataWise process, which is steps 1 and 2, organizing for collaborative work and then building assessment literacy. So it struck me that there was evidence to suggest that you and Penny came back to your school with a plan to really engage in the prepare phase, and that the teachers saw that that work was evident after they looked at the rubric and then made an assessment for where they were. So it was nice to see that piece.
David, during the staff meeting, David had a chance to talk to the staff, and you made a connection for them, and I'd like you to, if you can, make a comment on that. The connection was around, in the feedback, people were saying, I finally get it, that what I'm actually doing in the classroom is DataWise. It's not just about me as a teacher. I'm actually doing DataWise in my classroom.
Absolutely. I think, and I haven't really spoken to you, Penny, a lot about the details about how you went about trying to introduce DataWise to the staff. I do know that some of the teachers work with the Y course, and then we did some staff meetings, and you use some of what you learned during the institute, like I used to think and now I think, with the staff. So when I walked through the schools the other day, 2 days ago, I noticed that there were examples of teachers using the ACE habits of mind, using some of the protocols that we introduced in the DataWise process in their classroom with their students. And I began to wonder myself, is this because this is what they had been doing all along? But then later I learned that no, in fact, Penny had modeled some of the work in the professional development sessions, and then that the teachers took those protocols and then used them in their classroom, which was something that I honestly, as somebody who's very connected to the DataWise process, never really saw what we did at the Institute moving into classrooms via the protocols. I just kind of saw it much more as staff development. So I guess I would say that I really noticed the way that you are really integrating the DataWise improvement process into the work that you're doing, and you're being very methodical and systematic about it. Penny was saying earlier that she didn't want to have another program that she was bringing in, and that's something that we vehemently state about the DataWise process, that it is a process to integrate, and it's not a program to implement. So it looks like you all have been very strategic, again, and systematic in how you have introduced the protocols to the staff so they begin to understand the ACE habits of mind and begin using them, so that as you move deeper from the prepare phase into the inquire phase, that they will be ready to go deeper with the inquiry part of the process, because they are doing the work.
Yeah, for them there was a real realisation. I thought this was just at staff meetings, and now I realise, you'll notice the language, now I realise I'm actually doing it in my room. Oh, okay. So for some of them it was, well, this is just good practice, we'll do it. But not all of them made that direct connection back to the DataWise. And that was what the feedback from that meeting, and you're talking about the different contexts. So for us, it was for a lot of people in their feedback, they said, oh, I actually know a lot about this, so I just didn't make that direct connection.
Right, and that's something that Kathy Baudet, who's the first author on the Blue Book and the Green Book, that's what she says all the time. She does not care that people actually call what they do DataWise. She just cares that they understand that they're engaging in an inquiry process that's going to improve teaching and learning, and that they begin to embody the ACE habits of mind. I do think that once teachers, though, are beginning to embody those habits of mind, and they learn that there is, in fact, a process that's called something, it can then help spur them into deeper learning. And along those lines, I would say one of the things that struck me was the amount of student work that's visible throughout your school. There are large amounts of, I want to use the word quality, even though I think it's quality, but large amounts of student work with feedback from teachers and from students on the work displayed in the classroom, so that any observer can kind of walk into your classrooms and see the kind of work that students are involved in, and students are actively engaged in setting their own goals for what they want to achieve. And you see I saw lots of examples of that in classrooms too, and lots of consistency around it. So it's evident to me that teachers are really prepared to do a lot of deep, meaningful work with digging into student data, because the student work is there for anyone to take a look at. So I'm really excited to see what happens when you all move into steps 3, 4, and 5.
Yeah, that'll be an interesting process. So, so that was very powerful. So I want to say thank you for that. If you had a recommendation.
Can I just ask a question?
Okay.
First?
Yeah.
Yeah. So tomorrow you fly back to
I do.
the US after your
sad.
albeit brief trip to Victoria. What is it that you will take away from your experience at Elsternwick? What is it that you might take away from your experiences in Victoria? And what feedback might you be giving the DataWise team at Harvard? So 3 things. 1, about Elsternwick, and 2, about what else you've seen in Victoria, and thirdly, feedback you'll be giving the DataWise team about what's happening down under.
Down under. I think I might be able to respond to all 3 of those things at once. But the item in the middle about Victoria, I might have to come back on and do some more elaboration. So we have spent a lot of time on the DataWise project team, really discussing what does it mean to integrate the process, the DataWise improvement process successfully at a school. And there could be many ways of integrating the process successfully, but I do think that evidence suggests, to go back to my ACE habits of mine, focusing on the E for evidence, that what Elsternwick has done is one way that you can integrate the process successfully so that you do not overwhelm teachers with the entirety of the process, making them think that it's a program, and you actually build skills over time in a systematic way that allows for capacity to be built and people to really kind of develop some sort of shared ownership of the work of moving into an inquiry process. I was thinking about the term buy-in, which is something that I hear a lot. People use buy-in, but I actually like to think more of like shared ownership. And hearing teachers in the faculty meeting yesterday saying, yes, now I get it, I understand the connections, means they're ready to own moving into the process to kind of uncover some deeper understanding about teaching and learning. So the biggest thing that I would take back is I have a concrete example now of what it means to take the balcony view approach after leading a professional development session like you all attended last year at the DataWise Summer Institute. You have two school leaders who were able to say, wow, this is something that can really help us. We want to take this back. What are the steps to making sure that we pull this off successfully? And you really decided to focus on the first two steps and really develop a lot of deep understanding there. The evidence from the stoplight protocol suggests that teachers feel that they've got a lot of deep understanding with the prepare phase, and then you slowly but surely kind of worked out the tentacles, as I like the tentacles to spread into the classrooms with other parts of the process, whether the teachers knew it or not, so that you're really building a strong foundation to launch deeper into the inquiry process. A big phrase that we use in DataWise is that you have to go slow to go fast. And I think that what we see at Elsternwick is an example of people who were ready and had a staff that was ready, but you still decided to move relatively slowly to make sure that you were ready to go deep in a very meaningful way. So that's, again, I have a concrete example now that I can point to and say, or not a concrete example now, but a concrete example from the international context that shows how you can really move slowly and methodically and kind of get some deep work done. So those are things that I take back from Elsternwick that I would take to the DataWise project that we can then help other people think through more systematically. Now regarding Victoria, I was able to see 3 different primary schools while I was here and 1 secondary school. And overall, I would say it was eye-opening to learn. I learned a lot about effective school leadership. I met 4 very different school leaders and 4 schools that have different levels of success. That, yeah, it was just really exciting to see that. I don't know how much more I can say right now because, again, I only saw 4 schools. But the biggest thing that, Penny and I talked about almost ad nauseum was the fact that students play at recess. And that was a really, really, really big takeaway for me, that for an hour every day, students are all released to playgrounds where they organize themselves, they negotiate space, they figure out who's going to be able to play with what, they all follow the rules, they line up when it's time to come back, and there are 3 to 4 teachers out there with about 500 to 600 students. And it all works beautifully. And then when the students come back in the classroom, they work. And I didn't see lots of fidgeting and lots of students who are off task or lots of teachers who are frustrated with students. And I'm wondering if there's a relationship between really focusing on the whole child and high quality education and students being able to focus. So that's something I'm taking back from Victoria, I guess, for us all to think about in the States more seriously. I mean, we have really done a number on our students with requiring lots of tests, requiring them to take lots of tests, and we've taken away lots of the arts. There are very few schools, not very few schools, but many schools have removed their band programs. Students don't take music as regularly as they used to. Art classrooms have been turned into rooms for testing coordinators to work in, and students are not exposed to the arts and play
Yeah.
to the extent that they once were.
Yeah.
So it's good to see that it's happening here.
And it can be done.
It can be done.
It can be done.
Yeah, I think it must be done.
And it's interesting